Welcome to the second episode of The Sous Chef. It's been quite a ride. It's been a long time. Our apologies for not getting this episode uploaded sooner, but I am Kimber A. Russell, Esquire, and my co-host is
Robert S. Alexander, Esquire.
And we are partners at Vanguard Advocates LLP in Chicago, Illinois. And today we're excited to be joined by Samoane Williams, who is the Community and Training Manager for the Justice Entrepreneurs Project, of which we are a part, which is also a part of the Chicago Bar Foundation. And we're really excited to have Samoane with us today because she's had a really interesting journey in her legal career, how she's become really part of our lives over the last couple of years. And we're really excited to talk to her today. So Robert, take it away.
So first, welcome, Samoane. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
So I kind of want to get started by asking about your legal career. After law school, just let us know what you did for a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. So after law school, I was burnt out and distraught, just to be honest. But I knew I really wanted to help people, and that's why I went to law school. So I knew I was looking to work at a legal aid organization. I'm originally from Michigan. And Michigan didn't have the infrastructure for like legal aid organizations. They didn't have a lot to choose from. So I did an internship before I graduated from law school in Chicago with the Chicago Legal Advocacy for Incarcerated Mothers. It was CLAIM at the time. It's now incorporated into Cabrini Green Legal Aid. And I fell in love with Chicago, and I fell in love with legal aid. And I also kind of fell in love with like criminal defense work. That organization didn't really do criminal defense work, but it did do things that were tangential to that. So we represented mothers that were in prison or recently out of prison, and we handled family cases for them. So we helped them with divorce, parentage, custody, visitation, stuff like that. And I really fell in love with the work. I fell in love with working with people, with working with clients that look like me, and also people that just needed genuine help. They reminded me of my family members, and that's really the kind of work that I wanted to keep doing. So right out of law school, I got an internship. Well, I got an AmeriCorps position with First Defense Legal Aid. So in that job, I was representing people in Chicago police custody throughout the whole city, and basically telling them what their rights were and making sure that the police were doing what they were supposed to do, and recording everything that the police did. So I stayed there for 2.5 years, and ended up leading their street law program and their attorney program before I ended up leaving on to another position. After that, I worked as a policy director for Raise the Floor Alliance, and I did workers' rights issues. So I basically wrote policy that would help workers. And when I say workers, I mean people that are low income or up to middle income. So people that are generally not salaried for various reasons. And I really enjoyed that work too. And then moved on to do some disability rights at Equip for Equality. And now I'm here. So okay. I did a lot of helping people. And I'm glad that I did that, but I'm really also glad to be at the Justice Entrepreneurs Project and help other attorneys develop their practice.
That is a jam-packed journey that you've had already, but I want to kind of like break it down a little bit more because you mentioned a lot of stuff. But it was interesting to me that you had mentioned you felt really burnt out even just coming out of law school. So how did your law school experience inform the type of work that you ended up doing, and how was it different from what you originally set out to do when you went to law school in the first place?
Sure. So I went to law school to help people, and I know everybody says that, but I just come from a family where there's a huge disparity in wealth. So my dad was the only person who completed a 4-year degree, and my dad's an engineer. He's the only one that has like a skill in my family. And so I just saw my family, I saw neighbors, I saw friends going through issues because they just don't know how systems work. They don't know how the law works. And I wanted to be a resource mostly to my family and to my community. And then it just branched out into, the communities in Chicago. So I was burnt out in law school because in my experience, law school did not focus on people that look like me or people that have my experience. And it was a very draining experience to talk about laws, but not talk about how they actually affect people. And so that's why I say I was burnt out. Law school is an anxiety-ridden place. It just fosters anxiety. Everybody is anxious. And also it just doesn't, I think there's a lack of care for people within the law school environment. It doesn't teach you how to actually provide services that are intentional and that really show that you care about your client. So that's why I say I was burnt out. And I don't think things really changed drastically after I graduated from law school. I still wanted to do that type of work. I just didn't know how to get there. I originally wanted to do policy work. I thought that doing things on a grand scale would be the best use of my time. But after doing some policy work, I finally got a job where I could do policy work and found out that really wasn't for me either, because I think sometimes with policy and you're working with legislators, they don't necessarily have the same intentions that I had personally for a community. So that's why you see a lot of hopping around, because I was just trying to find that good fit.
Well, like thinking about like being burnt out after law school, I was so burnt out that I decided not to be an attorney for a while. So I truly understand that. And the whole like wanting to help people and then trying to figure out how do I help people, but also live.
Yes.
Something that I struggled with trying to leave law school. I mean, it's obviously something that we're dealing with now. And, like your position at the JEP is a new position, really. And I mean, obviously, like you and I see each other like every couple of weeks or whatever. And so we have like good talks. But, having like worked with the new cohort and gotten your feet wet, I mean, being thrown in like to the fire, really, like, what is it that's like, what did you want this job to be? And, what is it that you hope to help attorneys achieve?
Yeah, so when I joined this position, and I've heard of JP when it first started, I think I came to Chicago maybe a year or two after the first cohort started of the JEP, and I worked with Trevor Clark, who was the old manager of the JEP when I was at FDLA. So I would work with him each month and try to I basically was trying to get space so that I could do trainings for FDLA at the JEP office. And when I joined FDLA, two of the attorneys there were also JEPers. So that's how I knew about the JEP program. I knew about Trevor. I knew about the CBF. So this has always been something that I wanted to do. It's just, I'm glad that the opening came up and I was available and started with this program. So my vision for the program, when I first started, was just to keep up the good work. But now that I'm in it, I really want to make sure that people leave the program knowing how to run their business, having practical skills, and also being true to why they started their business. A lot of people join the JEP because they want to help people. So how do you create a client-centric program, a client-centric law firm, but also still make enough to support yourself? And that's really that's my goal, is to make sure that we have trainings that allow for our participants to have a client-centric law firm that also pays them a living wage.
Can you tell us more about the JEP in general? Because I know this type of incubator is starting to be more widely seen throughout the country, but it's still fairly new and it's quite innovative. So could you tell our viewers a little bit more about what the Justice Entrepreneurs Project is and what its mission is in assisting young or not necessarily young, attorneys who are looking to strike out on their own?
Yeah, great. So the JP is an incubator for people that want to start their own law firms. And you don't have to be right out of law school to start your own law firm. You can be seasoned. Kimber, you are a seasoned attorney starting your law firm. or you'd be right out of law school. It really doesn't matter. It's just if you have the passion and the grit to really want to start your own business, that's the JEP is a place for you. We really want people that want to start a business, though. We're not looking for people that just want to practice law. We want people that want to run a business. And running a business is a lot different than practicing law. In law school, they don't teach you how to run a business. They don't teach you what entities works best for you. They don't teach you how to keep your budget and keep your finances in order, or how to provide a product that's going to be profitable for you.
Yes.
And that's what the JEP program is meant for. It's a good bridge if you're right out of law school, but it also is a good training program if you're seasoned, have practiced some, but just need to know how to run a business.
Yeah. And so like going further in that vein, what do you see as your main, I guess I would say, responsibility to helping us? I mean, because Kimber is in the current cohort. I've graduated, but, you know, what do you see as your responsibility towards the attorneys as far as like making sure people are thinking like business people?
Yeah, so my interpretation of my job is to be a resource. So my job is to go out and look for new resources that I can bring back to the JEP. I'm constantly reading books, reading blogs, meeting with tech people that offer products that will be useful to the JEP network. And also just constantly be a reminder to people that in order to run a business, you want to think about profitability. You want to think about the services you provide to clients. You want to think about marketing. That's my job, is to constantly be a reminder to people about those things when they run their business.
And what are some of the biggest obstacles that you see? And I know we've definitely had our share as we've gone through these going on 2 years that we've had our firm. What are some of the biggest obstacles that new attorneys in the program seem to face every cohort?
Okay, so I can only speak on 1 or 2 cohorts because I haven't been here that long. But what I am seeing is profitability. Like, how do you make the services you provide profitable? I know that we get a lot of attorneys that are really passionate about helping people and providing services to the community, but how do you make that profitable? I want to make sure, you know, you can, I mean, I want all of the attorneys in our program to be able to eat too. I think that's important. You can't really pour into other people if you're running on an empty tank. So I think the main issue that I'm seeing is when you're first starting your business, how do you make enough money to support yourself?
And so thinking about that and your background where you've done a lot of like client and people-centered work. And obviously, like a lot of us who are in the JEP or in the JEP network want people-centered practices, things like that. It's just, I mean, just thinking about like the journey we've taken in our law firm and how we're constantly like, how do we price this affordably, but also how do we price it to where it's affordable for us to do it?
Mm-hmm.
And like I come to you for that all the time. Like we discuss that a lot, but you know, do you hear that a lot? Do you hear things like that? Like, is that something?
So, I mean, I'm also new to this program. I'm familiar with a lot of people in it. So I'm still learning what people need. Mm-hmm. But from my experience, like if you're coming from a legal aid organization and you practice for years, you don't know how much it costs to do like a foreclosure or to like help somebody with a criminal defense case, because all that stuff is handled by your employer. Handled by the organization. So you don't know how to price that out. Even if you know how to do good work, it's just like, how do you set a good price for that? But could you remind me of the last part of your question? I don't want to get back.
Like, I'm just wondering, like, what kind of advice is it that you like have? What kind of, because you have experience with a people-centered approach to the law. Mm-hmm. And now you're in this position where it's like you're trying to help people build profitable businesses while also being people-centered. And like dealing with that on a regular basis myself, I'm just wondering like what kind of advice is it that you have that you're trying to like share with people, or, you know, what are your thoughts on that just in general?
You know, I think I'm going to need more time with with the JEP network to really be able to answer that question. I think pricing is really hard because you won't have that. If you've practiced before, your employer handles what the rate is.
Right.
So it's like you have to do trial and error a lot of times. I think that's just what it takes. And also the JEP network is supposed to be an open space for you to bring those questions to more seasoned attorneys that have been practicing longer in this program. So that's the only advice I could give right now, is just asking older JEPers how they price and how they landed on the prices that they have. And also asking other solo practitioners throughout the city and having comparable prices. But really, what we want people to focus on in the program is focusing on your value. This takes you to do it. You're focusing on the value you offer to your client. So you have to price things based off of that and not based off of how fast you can do it or just arbitrary measures. It really has to be, okay, so I'm doing this life-changing thing for you, and this is a one-time thing, and it takes me this much time to do it, and it costs this much for overhead, and then put all that together, and that's your pricing structure.
But see, I think it's important for you to say things like that, like the value that it brings to people, because I mean, I'm just thinking about the first time Kimber and I got a case, like we undercharged so much. I mean, he was so excited to have us as attorneys, like he loves us, like it was great. We brought a lot of value to him. We made no money on that, which is fine. You know, it was our first case. We were excited, but I think that like that is something that, like, I appreciate you saying the value, because I think that's something that we need to like reiterate over and over to the network, but especially to like the incoming cohorts.
For sure.
Like,
For sure.
and a lot of
people that start new and are not as seasoned, they're thinking, oh, I'm not an expert at this, so I can't charge you. But the thing is, you are an expert. You went to 3 years of school. You had to pass a bar exam. You are current. You know how the law works. I think if you just start with that, that's a lot more than what lay people have. Mm-hmm. So you still have a lot to offer. It's a lot of value, and you should charge for that. And it should be enough to cover your expenses and also to pay yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that value, I think, is the thing that is most difficult. One thing I think it's interesting is the imposter syndrome that I feel like many of us, especially as a solo practitioner. Now, if I were a white dude, I don't know if I would have the same trepidation about going into law, and instead of waiting until I was 46 years old to go into my own practice. But imposter syndrome is something that I think a lot of us deal with. Is that something that you've ever felt in your own practice and in your professional experience?
I feel it all the time. And I don't think imposter syndrome is necessarily bad. It just means that you have to rise to the occasion. So I feel it at every single job that I've had, but I've also excelled at the jobs that I've had, because I'm like, I'm going to rise to this occasion. Maybe I'm not feeling maybe I'm feeling inadequate right now, but I'm a fast learner, and I'm also willing to learn. I'm willing to take critique. And so if you're willing to do all that, then, I mean, imposter syndrome is basically, you can use that to propel yourself forward.
That's a good way to look at that.
And I did not come up with that. I read that somewhere, so.
Oh, well, thanks for sharing it anyway. But like, to kind of like pivot a little bit, so like now you're like doing this job, but you know, just in general, like what are your thoughts about like alternative careers once you like leave law school? Because we all go to law school to be lawyers, but not everybody loves it. Not everybody wants to stick with it. Like, what are your thoughts on alternative careers?
I think that we should talk more about it in law school. I don't think that having your own practice and doing direct service works for everybody. I don't think everyone's brains work that way. Mm-hmm. I personally don't enjoy doing direct service. It takes a lot of energy, and I feel like it's also for me, it felt like doing the same thing over and over and over again, but not really solving the underlying issue. Mm-hmm. So direct service is not for me. I think direct service is necessary, but it does take a lot. And when I was doing a lot of direct service, I think I was getting like secondary trauma, just hearing just horrible stories over and over and over again. And I don't want my life to be consumed with that. And that's why I moved away from direct service. And granted, I also was working in areas where people are locked up, and I'm seeing people in chains, and people like in prison, or just extremely poor people. And like, I can't really do anything to help them. I can help them solve this one thing, but there's a bunch of other issues that I just can't help with. And that was very taxing to me. So I do think that we need to talk more in law school about other things that you can do with a law degree. You can do a lot with a law degree. You can work at foundations. They love to hire attorneys because attorneys are generally thorough, good writers, and can analyze what an organization can bring to the table. Like, so foundations are another option. Legal aid organizations, you can run a legal aid organization. You don't have to provide direct service. You could do policy work. There's a lot of businesses and nonprofits that are looking for lobbyists. So that's another thing that you can use your skills from law school to do as a job. And like other government positions, I think are good if you have a law degree but don't necessarily want to do direct service.
What are some of the misconceptions you think when people go into law school? You very rarely hear people start their law school journey thinking that they're not going to practice law in some capacity. What do you think the misconception is about alternative legal jobs are, and why do you think law schools don't prepare people for the fact that many of them will never practice law to begin with?
I think there's a myth that those jobs don't pay well. I also think that there's a myth that those jobs don't like need the skills of a lawyer to do them. And I think that once you have your law degree, it's really easy to transition to a lot of different positions. I've done a lot of different work. So yeah, I think the way that we talk about it in law school, because I didn't have a lot of help either. I knew kind of going in that maybe direct service wasn't the right thing for me, but I still was going to make myself do it because I went to law school for 3 years and had to do the bar exam. So it's like, you might as well at least try to work for a firm or try to provide direct service. And I did. I gave it an honest try, and it just wasn't compatible with me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't really know. I think it's really, you have to evaluate what works for you and what doesn't.
Yeah. I think that like when I was in law school, we had a career advisor who specialized in alternative careers.
Wow. That's great.
She had like been a barista. She had done so many different things when she left law school before like coming into career services. And I think that like she was a huge help, like, because I mean, I left law school and became a chef, but it was after talking to her because I was like, I don't want to do these legal interviews anymore. I don't want anything to do with the law. And she was like, well, what do you like? And I was like, I like cooking. And she was like, well, try that. I was like, I can do that? Like, it seemed so bizarre to me. And then I did it. But, you know, like, I think one thing that I'm interested to hear from actually both of you about is, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, like if you do your passion, that's, you know, you should work at your passion and you should like figure out how to monetize your passion. I disagree with that.
Me too.
Having done that, and it kind of like robbed me of my passion for cooking for a while, just because the work is hard, like the money is garbage, and it's just like, it takes all the creativity and fun out. And so, you know, my philosophy is if it's like something you can do, you don't hate, you kind of like it, it's interesting, do it. And then you can have your passions as hobbies, but like, how do you feel about that?
I agree with you. And also, I did not come up with this, but I do, I think when you say like follow your passion, I think it's hurtful. Like for me, I did try to follow my passion, and a lot of these, like some of these legal aid jobs, they don't even pay you enough to pursue your passion. And there's this myth out there, like if you are not willing to just like, you know, barely be able to pay your bills, then you're really not dedicated to this work. And I don't think that that's true. Instead, I've been focusing on what am I actually interested in at this point in time? What am I curious about? What makes me feel creative and fulfilled? So those are things that I'm constantly exploring, and it's not necessarily within the legal field. I enjoy processes and systems. So that's why this job is really great for me, because I love managing stuff. This job keeps me challenged, but I'm not overwhelmed. And those are things that I'm looking for, instead of like, yeah, I want to help people, but there's other things to that.
Yeah. Kimber, what do you think about that?
I agree with Samoane. I do think it's really damaging to say do what you love and the money will come, because I went to cooking school and the money did not come. I decided I was going to go to graduate school so that I could be a filmmaker. That also left me with incredible amounts of debt, and the money did not come. And I was also told, go to law school because you seem like you've got a great head for it and the money will come. That also has not happened yet. So I think when it comes to balancing between your passion and your profession, sometimes you have to make some kind of a compromise where you can do a job that you're interested in, just like Samoane says, like that you can do that, or that you can take some joy from it, but that you also can separate it out and do what you have as a passion. Because for the same thing for me, when I worked as a cook, I hated it. I was doing the same thing every day. I was tired all the time. I would go home and eat ramen. And that robbed me of all the joy. And I feel like it's the same thing with YouTubers. They start doing these fun little videos, and then suddenly they have like a daily posting schedule, and you've got these 17-year-old kids who've been doing unboxing videos since they were 7, and they're burnt out. So that's something we all need to think about when we're getting career advice, is look at the person who's giving you the advice and make sure that they're credible and that they're doing something that they're actually passionate about, if they're going to be giving you that kind of
Exactly.
Yeah, if they're going to give you that advice.
So as we wrap up, I just want to know, is there anything that we should have asked you that you want to talk about that we kind of missed?
Okay, so I missed something. When you asked me about pricing and how to set that up and focusing on value, I do think that it's a good exercise to write down the value that you give to customers. So when I say value, I mean, are you responsive? Are you gonna like take your client and hold their hand the entire way through? Are you gonna be extra communicative? Are you going to are you going to be extra thoughtful? Like, those are things that add to the value on top of doing what your client asked you to do. I think if you write all that down, that will also help you to inform what price you should charge. And I'm using my example that I have. I'm a landlord. So when I'm trying to set prices, I'm like, I don't want to gouge anyone, but I want to make sure I have enough to pay for the expenses for this house. And also be able to not be burnt out. It has to be worth it for me to do this. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking at the value I offer. I'm going to be responsive. If you call me in the middle of the night, I'm going to get up and come to your apartment in the middle of the night. But you're also going to pay for that. So there's things that, you need to really take into account, and things that aren't necessarily that are going to come to mind. But really think about what other things that you offer that are going to be valuable to your client.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Well, so I just want to ask everybody, are you reading anything good, interesting, watching anything fun?
I just read a book called The Midnight Bargain, which is, it's a sort of magical fantasy about, it's sort of like if Jane Austen also did magic. And it's written by an African-American author, C.L. Polk, and it's a terrific read. Highly recommend it. She has other fantasy in her body of work. Totally recommend it. It was a great read, especially for the holidays. I would recommend it.
Okay.
Cool. And I just read Profit First. And I got this originally for the JEP, but then I was like, ooh, this looks interesting. So I started reading Profit First by Mike Michalowicz. Very good. It's currently in the JEP office. It gives you takeaway skills that you can apply right away. Like from the very first chapter, he gives you a task to do. and he wants you, the focus of the book is to be profitable. So he talks about how do you budget, how do you run your business in order for you to be profitable, and gives you really easy takeaway steps that you can start applying right away. So I highly recommend that book.
All right. And I am rewatching this wonderful Chinese drama called Ru Yi's Royal Love in the Palace. It is on Hulu. Please check it out. It is great. It is amazing.
I love this show.
That's definitely on my watch list.
The Empress Dowager gets all up in your business. You're going down.
So yeah.
You gotta watch
Samoane,
out.
thank you so much for doing this with us. We really appreciate your time. You actually gave me a lot to think about, and I'm probably gonna grab that book. I've been eyeing it for a couple of days.
You should read it.
Grab it and go for it.
It's a quick read too. Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm really honored that you even wanted me to come and talk about my work. So thank you.
Well, we appreciate you, and that wraps it up for the second and definitely not the last episode of The Sous Chefs, presented by Vanguard Advocates LLP. And this is Kimber A. Russell, Esquire, signing off.
Robert S. Alexander, Esquire, also signing off.